I want to talk to you this session on the subject, how to evaluate potential leaders. I was recently doing an interview with Ed Rowell at Leadership Magazine as they're getting ready this fall to do an interview article on me and leadership out of their magazine. And he asked me many, many questions. It was like a 4-hour interview on leadership. One of the questions, though, he asked me really speaks to what I'm going to talk about. And so I wrote it down in my notes. I want to give it to you. You don't need to write it down in your notes, but it'll be kind of the foundation for the entire lesson today on evaluating potential leaders. Ed asked me this question: can a non-leader identify, enlist, and develop leaders in the organization? It's a pretty powerful question. In other words, he was saying, John, there are a lot of pastors who do not understand leadership. They're in a leadership position, but they're not as successful as leaders yet. Can a non-leader, and he really was asking three things, can a non-leader identify, enlist, and develop leaders? Now, my answer to him, as he asked it kind of in three different compartments, was to answer it in three different compartments. I said, first of all, identify, the answer is yes. A non-leader can identify other leaders. Now, it is through learned training that you can identify leaders, but there are certain qualities, there are certain characteristics of leaders that they all have, that if you know what they look like and you know what those characteristics are, you can identify some of the leaders within your organization. When he asked the question, can they enlist those leaders? Can a non-leading pastor enlist leaders to help join him or her? Then I said that answer is not yes like the first one, it's sometimes. So let me explain. The only way a non-leader can enlist a leader to help him or her in an organization is if the leader that he or she is trying to enlist has high respect for the non-leader. I have seen it happen where a non-leader or a person in a leadership position that was not good in leadership had and enlisted people around them that were good leaders because they had such a respect. The person may not be a good leader, but they may be a person of integrity, they may be a person of character, they may be a godly person, and there was such respect that they came on even though the person was kind of a non-leader. But he asked a third part of that question. Not only can they identify and enlist, but he said, can a non-leader develop leaders? Seldom. Once in a while, perhaps on a major exception, but seldom. And the reason for that is it's an ability issue. If you are a non-leader trying to develop a leader, the only way that I can think of it happening is if you say, okay, I'm not a leader, I want to develop the leaders around me, so I'm going to take resources, tools, materials from other leaders, and I'm going to be the facilitator of those materials. For example, tapes of this conference. You could get your leaders around them. The Enjoy Life Club, developing the leader within you. In other words, you could take books, resources, and say, here, let's sit down and let me facilitate it. I've always said that, for example, a non-leader could show the leadership videos of a conference like this and with workbooks and facilitate them and spark the other people and help them to really develop their leadership. But it's not easy. It's pretty difficult. Now, the reason I start off when I talk about evaluating potential leaders with that question is this. Before I share with you how to evaluate potential leaders, let me again impress upon you the seriousness of developing leaders around you. The number one leadership lesson that I've ever learned, we've talked about it before, we'll talk about it at least twice more today, is those who are closest to you will determine the level of your success. That's a fact. You can go to the bank on that. Now, we all have heard the quote, all is well that ends well. We've heard that, right? Can I tell you something? All's well that begins well. And what we're going to talk about in evaluating leaders is about how to begin well. I want to help create a picture for you so that you understand what a leader looks like so that you can go back and pick a leader. Again, going back to the question and answer time a little bit earlier. when the one pastor said what we've all said, well, what happens if I have put a hurting person in a leadership position? We all identify with that. Every one of us understood what happens when you put a non-leader in a leadership position, when you put a hurting person in a leadership position. I mean, you've got to have a picture and know what that person looks like so that when you bring them in, you have an assurance that you're going to begin well. And the key to recognizing and the key to evaluating a potential leader is to have a picture of one. So let me give you a picture of a leader. By the way, for many years, I've been a San Diego Padre baseball fan. And don't hold it against me. Do not hold it against me. I'm going to tell you right now, for years, the San Diego Padres have been the finest minor league team in the majors. So be nice. And this year, they're a major league team. They're putting together a good winning team. They're in first place, and I will see you in the World Series. Well, I won't see you. Your team won't be there, but I'll see somebody's team. Okay. At the San Diego Padre game, one of the things they would do between innings to kind of keep everybody entertained is they had on the big jumbotron, the big vision thing up there. They would put a piece of a puzzle. It would be like a puzzle. They put a little part of a baseball player's face up there on the big screen. And with one piece up there, you could not tell who that player was. You kind of look at it and say, well, who's this? And then they'd put another piece, and then another piece. Well, what they would do is over about 60 seconds, they would fill in the spots until after a while you had the picture of the player. Now, immediately, when most of the pieces were in place, you'd say, oh, I know who that is, and hey, wow, that's Tony Gwynn, or whoever. You would be able to name who the baseball player is. But you never could with just one piece. Now, what's interesting is, as soon as you knew who the player was, if you'd take most of the pieces off the board and just see one piece or two pieces, you'd say, oh, I know who that is, because you had a picture of who it was. You see, most of our life, we have gone through in this area of evaluating leaders, and nobody's ever put the picture together for us. We have a piece here, and maybe a piece there, and man, we say, well, you know, are they a leader or not? Boy, could they become a leader? And nobody has ever really sat down and said, let me show you what a leader looks like. And that's what this lesson is dedicated to. This lesson is dedicated to helping you, to helping me understand what does a leader look like. By the way, before I give you this picture and start painting this picture of what a leader looks like, I had to put this in your notes from the Quote Digest because I love it. A large corporation recently installed a stray dog as a senior vice president. The announcement in the company bulletin read, his ability to get along with anyone, his prompt response to a pat on the back, his interest in watching others work, and his great knack for looking wise while saying nothing make him a natural for this position. I'll be honest with you, I'm going to hope to do a better picture than this. I really am. I hope to do a little better. Okay, here's the picture. Piece number 1. 10 pieces that'll give you a profile of what a leader looks like. Number 1, leaders make things happen. And by the way, that is truly number 1. In fact, I think I've given these to you in order of what I really consider to be important. George Crane said it well. There is no future in any job, and the future lies in the person who holds the job. Boy, that's the truth. Now, here's what I want you to know about leaders. Leaders are a rare breed in the fact that, to be honest with you, they aren't concerned with what most people are concerned about. If they have a vision of what it's going to be, they start moving. They make things happen. Now, they start moving. There are other people that don't want to move yet. They want to analyze. They want to think. They want to see everything. Nothing wrong with those other people. But I want to tell you something. Leaders don't get nervous about what most people get nervous about, because they have the ability to make things happen. You see, if you're not a leader, your ability to see anything happen is always determined by someone else. So therefore, if you're not a leader, you have to be very careful to make sure the conditions are right, the job description is right, that everybody is lined up the way they need to be lined up, because you know all of that is going to affect what you are able to do. Nothing wrong with that. But a leader, I don't want to be nonchalant, and I don't want to be flippant, but I'm here to tell you what bothers most people doesn't even enter my mind. because I have a vision of where I'm going to go, and I know that I'm going to make something happen. Now, if you want to take the trip with me and have something happen to you too, you can. But we're moving. The train is moving. They're very action-oriented. They're very... When you see a leader, I'll tell you what, whenever you see a leader, there is movement. A classic example that shows not only my naiveness, but what I'm speaking of, is when I went to San Diego as pastor in 1981. I didn't know what my salary was. I mean, when I said I don't know what my salary was, I didn't know what my salary was. Never asked him. Never cared to know. Didn't matter. I remember I'd been there for 2 weeks when the administrator came walking into the office one day. He couldn't handle it anymore. He said, "You have been now here for 2 weeks as a senior pastor." He said, "You don't even know what you're making." I looked up, I said, "You're right, I don't." Well, I know what he thought. He thought I would then ask him, "What am I making?" But I went back to work because I knew I was driving him absolutely crazy. And I would rather drive him crazy. It's a gift. Well, he hung around for a few months. He said, "Let me tell you." But he said, "Before I tell you, why don't you care?" I said, "Steve, it doesn't matter. Because I'm going to grow this church, and I'm going to raise up some leaders, and I'm going to get this thing moving." And I said, "I'll have a board meeting down the road after I've started producing, and I'll have my own salary meeting, and we'll sit down and discuss what I'm worth. And after they see what I'm worth, they'll pay me what I'm really worth anyway, which is going to be probably a lot more than they're paying me now." It really doesn't matter. And it didn't. And he told me. And it didn't matter. Now, the reason it didn't matter is not because it's not important. And I'm not trying to be flippant about salary. And what I'm wanting you to understand is, I know that I have the ability to produce. And the moment that I have the ability to produce, I always know what happens. The finances follow, the morale follows, the leaders follow, everything follows movement. And so therefore what I do is it's my job to produce, build, develop, and move. And everything else will flow right to it. Always has, always will. You see, the best friend of a leader is positive momentum. In fact, I cannot explain to you enough the value of what momentum will do for an organization. And when I say leaders make things happen, let me tell you something. Leaders are what I call momentum makers. In fact, I just did a lesson recently on momentum makers versus momentum breakers. There are breakers in the organization that literally stop the momentum, and then there are makers in the organization that literally propel the movement of that organization. Now, every organization has 4 types of people who, in one way or another, affect momentum. There are what I call momentum breakers, which they do and say things that stop the momentum. Then there are, in every organization, what I call momentum takers. They say and do things that sap the momentum. Isn't that true? They're sap suckers. Anything that has movement, they just kind of migrate to and try to pull all the strength out of it. And then there are what I call momentum fakers. You know what they try to do? They try to stage momentum. Did you ever see a momentum faker? Did you ever, hey, pastor, did you ever try to make a service? Come on now. Tell the truth and shame the devil. They try to stage momentum. They hype it. They try to make something bigger than what it is. Of course, what happens is it takes off just a little bit and it fizzles real quick. So there are momentum breakers. They stop it. Momentum takers, they sap it. There are momentum fakers, and they stage it. And then there are momentum makers, and they start it. And leaders are momentum makers. They know how to make movement in an organization. They know how to make movement with people. They just make movement. They're just incredible. They understand the process. Let me give you an illustration. When I first went to San Diego at the church, I had a wonderful young lady whose name was Barbara, who was my assistant. And one day I asked her for a phone number for something. I can't remember what it was, but whatever it was. About 30 minutes later, she said she couldn't find the number. I said, Barbara, what do you mean you can't find the number? She said, well, I tried, can't find it. I said, come on in. Sit down here beside my desk. Oh, I said, okay, I'll find the number. But you sit here while I find this number. Took me 45 minutes. I found the number. When I got done, I said, I'll tell you something, Barbara. Don't ever come back to me again and tell me something can't be done. In the next 11 years, that lady never told me that something can't be done. You know what I was telling her? Leaders don't accept excuses. They just do it. They find a way. Now, it may take them days. It may take them 45 minutes to find a number, but they're going to find a number. I mean, they haven't got a list of why I can't, shouldn't, didn't, and wouldn't. They cause things to happen. You see, most people, they don't cause things to happen. When nothing happens, they look for excuses of why it isn't happening. There's a creativity about leaders that they just don't accept barriers, they don't accept boundaries, they don't accept what most people accept. They just say, no, this is a way to do it, and I'm going to find out the way to get this done, and they creatively work themselves through the maze until they come out on the other side. And everybody else kind of says, where did they go? How did they get there? It's a mindset. It's like Jack Nicholson in the movie 5 Easy Pieces when he wanted a side order of toast. And the waitress said to him, she said, you can't have a side order of toast. I mean, that doesn't happen with what you're ordering. The side order of toast doesn't come. Don't you love these people? They just absolutely kill me. People are projects every day for me to take to a new level. No matter where I am, just look at them and say, I always say to myself, do they want to live on this level? Is this where they want to live all their life? So anyway, when she said he wanted a side order of toast and she said he couldn't have it, he said, okay. He said, I'll tell you what I want. He said, I want a chicken sandwich, toasted. He said, oh, by the way, hold the mayo, remove the lettuce, and don't put the chicken in it. Got a side order of toast. Listen to me. When you give a leader a responsibility, they'll go do it. That's the best way to describe a leader. Leaders cause things to happen. Most people look at life and wonder what happened. But leaders cause things to happen. So when you're ever trying to evaluate a leader, the first thing you always do is you look at that person, him or her, you look at that individual and say, okay, are they causing things? I mean, when they are in the middle of something, is it happening? I love the illustration. In fact, it's kind of one you had to visually see, so I put it in your notes because you have to read it and you have to see this misspelling. But it's called sell, not spell. A newly hired traveling salesman wrote his first sales report to the home office. It so stunned the brass in the sales department because it was obvious that the new salesman was ignorant. Here's what he wrote. I seen this outfit, which they ain't never bought a dime's worth of nothing from us. I done sold them some goods, and I'm now going to Chicago. Before the man could be given the heave-ho by the sales manager, along came this letter from Chicago. I come here and sold them $500,000. Fearful if he did and afraid if he didn't fire the ignorant salesman, the sales manager dumped the problem in the lap of the president. The following morning, the ivory towered sales department members were amazed to see posted to the bulletin board above the 2 letters written by the ignorant salesman and this memo from the president. We've been spending too much time trying to spell instead of trying to sell. Let's watch those sales. I want everybody should read these letters from Gooch, who is on the road doing a great job for us, and you should go out and do like he done. Isn't that beautiful? Now, what am I saying? I want to tell you right now. I didn't say leaders could spell. Leaders just cause things to happen. And Gooch, he's a leader. You send him out, things happen. Now, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You can send somebody out, and nothing happens. I mean, you could send somebody out and people didn't even know they left the room. They're not a leader. Leaders, hey, leaders will always bring home the bacon. Always will. They'll just bring home the bacon and say, here's some bacon. Want me to go get some more? Leaders make things happen. That is the number one way to spot a leader. If they can't make things happen where they are, they won't make things happen when they come along with you. It doesn't get better when they move. Number two. The second part of this puzzle of a picture of what does a leader look like is that leaders see and seize opportunities. Leaders have the ability to smell opportunity. I mean, they don't even have to see it. They can know if they're within the vicinity of it. Now, by the way, I love the quote, opportunities are seldom labeled. Opportunities don't come to you and say, I'm an opportunity here, opportunity calling. They don't do that. Why is it that some people miss opportunities? Well, at least three reasons. Letter A, some wait for it. Many people miss opportunities because they somehow think that it comes to them. Ellen Metcalf said great words. I would like to amend the idea of being in the right place at the right time. There are many people who were in the right place but didn't know it. Boy, that's the truth. You have to recognize when the right place and the right time fuse and take advantage of that opportunity. There are plenty of opportunities out there. You can't sit back and wait. Amen, Ellen. The second reason we miss opportunities is some think that it is luck. They have what I call a lottery mindset. They think really an opportunity just hits some people kind of like lightning and misses other people. And Walter Chrysler defined these people well when he said, the reason so many people never get anywhere in life is because when opportunity knocks, they're out in the backyard looking for four-leaf clovers. And the third reason that many people miss opportunities is that they do not know what an opportunity looks like. And so I'm going to do my best to see if I can help us understand what an opportunity looks like. Let me first kind of describe an experience that every one of us have had with opportunities. Remember, the second characteristic of a leader is that leaders have the ability to see and seize opportunities. They smell them out. Every one of us will understand this illustration. Every one of us have had an opportunity come to us, slip by us, we didn't take advantage of it, and now it's on the backside. And a day or two later we say, boy, I wish I would have done that. Man, why didn't I do that? Now, you see, I learned a long time ago, we can see an opportunity once it's past us much easier than when it's coming to us. Much easier. Why? It's very simple. When it passed us, we got to look at what it looked like. Leaders have an ability to know what an opportunity looks like when it's coming. And basically, leaders are just the first ones to show up. And they seize that opportunity, and as it passes others, now there is a felt need in people's lives saying, boy, we should have done that, but the opportunity has already been seized by the leader, and so now he or she is the man or the woman of the hour because he's been there, done that, and it literally causes people to migrate to the leader because what they missed as an opportunity, he seized, and now all of a sudden there's that feeling, I should have been there. Oh, he is there. Oh, I'm going there. Now, every once in a while, somebody picks me up at the airport, and they don't know who I am. This is always a fun exercise for me. They've never heard me in a conference. Maybe they're just picking me up for somebody that I'm going to do a conference for, but they don't know who I am, and so they pick me up at the airport. And when my assistant, Linda, says, John, somebody's going to pick you up at the airport, I always tell her the very same thing. Tell them to catch me, because I don't wait on them. I know where I'm going. Get me a taxi. I'll be there. So I'm not going to hang around an airport waiting for somebody that's looking for me. So either they catch me and they take me, or I'm gone. In fact, if you come for me in the airport and my plane's been in for 5 minutes, don't search. I'm already in a taxi. I'm moving on. I don't have time in life to wait for somebody looking for me. There are better things to do. Now, so here they are. So she tells them this message. So there's a little panic. So you know what? They do one of two things. They'll have one of my books, and they'll have a picture of me. And I'll watch them. They'll get off this plane. I'll be holding up one of my books, and I'll be looking at this picture, and I'll be looking at everybody. Or they'll have a sign up for my name. One of those two things. Now, it's the mindset of people looking for opportunity. Now, watch this. The person that has my picture, now they're a wise person. They're a wise person because they're saying, okay, this is what he looks like. Okay, oh, here he comes. Okay, now the person that has the sign up, though, is the way most people treat opportunity. You know what they expect me? They expect me to see the sign and identify myself. Most people expect opportunity. I mean, here we are. Hey, we got a sign up. Opportunity? Opportunity. We expect opportunity to find us, knock on our shoulder and say, I'm here. And we miss it because we don't understand. Opportunity doesn't seek us out. We have to seek it out, and we can't seek it out unless we know what it looks like. Now, let me help you here. My wife, Margaret, loves to decorate. She can go into a store. It doesn't matter whether she's shopping for clothes or for furniture. It doesn't matter. She always knows what she wants. In fact, I shop with her all the time. I like to shop with her. She's fun to shop with. She isn't not what I call one of these touchy-feely shoppers. She doesn't have to touch everything and feel everything and hold everything up. Because you know what? I asked her one day, I said, Margaret, how come you go into a furniture store and say, that piece would look good in the corner of our house. Oh, this will be good. Oh, I love that outfit. Well, how can you do this stuff so fast? She said, it's very simple, John. She said, what do I spend a lot of my evenings doing? Well, it's very simple. She spends her evenings looking at catalogs. She loves to look at catalogs. She says, I look at catalogs, and I see an outfit, and it looks real good. I said, I like that outfit. I see, I like that piece. She said, I picture what I want before I go get it. So therefore, I already know what I'm looking for. I said, that's it. That's the same way it is with opportunity. That's the same way it is with everything in life. If we know what we're looking for, and leaders have that ability to know what they're looking for. Now, what's going to happen to you is by the time I'm done with this lecture on how to evaluate potential leaders, you're going to have a picture. You're going to be able to go back to your organization. You're going to be saying, well, I know what a leader looks like. Let's see, is there somebody in here that is making things happen? Oh, that person, everywhere they go, things are happening over there. Oh, who saw that opportunity to start that new ministry in the church? Who came up with that idea? Those are leaders. Okay, number 3. Leaders not only make things happen and seize opportunities, leaders influence others. Now, we know that. We've already talked a lot about the fact that leadership is influence. We've done a whole lesson on leadership as influence. You see, leaders have 2 characteristics. One is they're going somewhere, and 2, they're able to persuade others to go with them. That's a fact. They're not only going somewhere, but they're able to persuade other people to go with them. That's what leaders do. They influence others. Remember when I was doing the lesson on influence, there was a question and answer time when you asked me, how do I spot people of influence? And remember I shared with you, well, go back to your congregation, go back to your organization and ask 3 questions. Remember, ask the question, if you wanted to start something, who would you go to other members of the church? If you wanted to stop something, who would you go to? And that kind of maybe shows you a negative influencer. And if you want to know what's going on, who would you go to? Well, interesting enough, this morning when we were having breakfast with some of the pastors, Galen gave this to me. Galen said, I went home, I guess it was last night, they had their Bible study or whatever, and he said, I picked out 20 people in my church. And he said, I asked them those 3 questions. And he gave me the list. I got his list there. He said, now, if you wanted to know what was going on, who would you ask? And they gave 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different people in their church that they would ask. This is so simple. Then he said, well, if you want to know how to start something, who would you ask? And they gave 3 names. And if you wanted to stop something, who would you ask? Now, interesting enough, they gave 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 names there. Now, here's what's interesting. The 3 names and the 5 names on the other 2 questions are also in the first category. And when I got done, he has identified without any question, he has identified 9 leaders, influencers in his church. So simple. Now he knows where to start. See, now Galen, where's my buddy Galen? Where are you? Galen. See what you do now. You got names of 9 people, they're influencers. Now you look at this list and you start asking yourself questions such as, how's my relationship with these people? Remember, you not only want to be an influencer, but you want to be able to influence influencers, and the only way that you can ever influence influencers is by a relationship. Then you sit back and you say, not only how's my relationship, but then you ask yourself, what kind of time do I spend with each one of these people? Because if they're influencers, these are the top 20%. These are the people you need to be spending 80% of your time with. Then you need to say, when I get with them, what am I doing with them? Do I have a game plan for them? Do I know what their spiritual gift is? Do I know what their heart says? Do I know what their dream is? Remember I talked about connecting yesterday? What's their heart? What's their hurt? What's their hope? You need to know that about all 9 of these people, Galen, because the reason you need to know that is because when you know what hurts them, when you know what helps, what their hope is, when you know what their heart is, now all of a sudden you're going to be able to relate. When you know what their spiritual gift is, you're going to be able to put them in the right place so they can have the most influence. When you relate well with them and they like you and you like them, they're going to become extensions of your ministry. Now you notice what I didn't ask? I didn't ask what the structure of your church is because, Galen, I don't care. It doesn't matter. This matters. The moment you know who your influencers are, the moment you relate well with them, the moment that you can take them and their spiritual gifts and put them in the right place, the moment you can dream together. I had a lady come up to me today and say, John, how do you give ownership of the vision? I've had a lot of you ask. I'm going to do an Enjoy Life Club tape on ownership of the vision because a lot of you are asking me that question. How do you give ownership of the vision? You know what I shared with her? Find your influencers. Here's what you do, Galen. These 9 people, 1 evening a month for the next 3 months, have them over to your house. Have coffee and dessert. And have them come over to your house and for an hour and a half say, I just want to share with you some things that are on my heart and I want some input from you. And let's just talk and pray through and let's develop a vision and a plan and a purpose for our church. And you just sit around and you talk and you think and you add value to and you get your idea. And then when somebody gives you a little bit better idea than yours, then you go crazy. You say, oh my goodness, if I wouldn't have had you here tonight, I wouldn't have done it near as good as it could have been done. That person will kill to give you another good idea. After a while, they own this sucker. They own this vision. They're going to die for this vision. They're going to charge hell with a water pistol. All because you understand that leaders influence others. Now, in your notes here, 3 questions to ask. Who do they influence? Who influences them? And are they gaining or losing influence? That's an important question because influence ebbs and flows. Ronnie and I last night having dinner, and Ronnie and I were talking about the ebb and the flow of leadership in a congregation and how a congregation goes through stages. And those who had influence at one stage begin, some of them, they decline in influence and others rise influence. You got to understand the ebb and the flow. And is this person gaining influence momentum or are they starting to lose influence momentum? Now I want to say this. When you have conflict with an influencer and that influencer says something like, okay, I'm going to quit or I'm going to leave the church or I'm going to get off the board, let him. Inside, you can sing the Hallelujah chorus. Because the moment a person begins to disfranchise themselves from the organization, their leadership begins to wane. Okay. Levels of influence from the highest to the lowest. The highest is that this person influences everyone. It's the story of Claude at Hillham. Claude influenced everyone. The smaller the organization, the more one person can have major influence. The larger the organization, one person will have less influence. So the highest is they influence everyone. Next level is they influence those that are over them. Then they influence those who are beside them. And then there are some who can only influence people under them. And then there's the lowest level. They influence no one. They can't even influence themselves. It's like the patient who went to the psychiatrist and sat down and he says, "What's your problem?" He said, "Well," he said, "my trouble is that no one ever listens to me." And the psychiatrist says, "Next." Let me say this. As you think of influence and how it works, I would encourage you to, on your own, list your influencers. List the areas that they influence. Do what Galen did. Find them, develop relationships with them. Get some ownership of the vision together and take off.
We now continue with part 2 of how to evaluate potential leaders.
Number 4. The fourth picture of a potential leader is that leaders add value to you. They do a great job. Leaders add value to you. Now, so far we've talked about the fact leaders make things happen. Leaders see and seize opportunities. Leaders have influence. Now they add value to you. And notice this paragraph. There are 4 kinds of people in your life: those who add, subtract, divide, or multiply. Every relationship will affect you for good or bad. Those who do not increase you inevitably will decrease you. The proverb writer said that, "He that walketh with wise men shall be wise, but the companion of fools shall be destroyed." Each relationship nurtures a strength or a weakness within you. So how do you allow others to add value to you? Let's start there. Number 1, make a commitment to team leadership. The moment you and I make a commitment to have a team leading the church instead of one person leading the church, we now allow people to come alongside and add value to us. Number 2, be secure. I don't have to dwell on this, but I can promise you, insecure people never allow others to lead. Insecure people want titles. Insecure people want positions. Insecure people mess up organizations. That's what they do. Outside of a moral problem, the worst thing any organization can have is a leader that is insecure. That leader will blow up the organization. Just give him or her time. It's only a matter of time. The third thing you do to allow others to add value to you is spend time together, relationally, so they know your heart. We've talked enough, I think, about that. Number 4, to allow others to add value to you, know your strengths and your weaknesses. It's very important for you to know not only what you do well, but what you don't do well. I know my weaknesses. I have major glaring weaknesses in my life. Those who are closest to me know my weaknesses well. They understand that I know my weaknesses. They help me in those areas because I need help. And number 5, build a dream team with different leadership styles. I would encourage you to understand leadership styles and then begin to find people that can fit in to those different leadership styles. For example, when I was with Bill Hybels at Willow Creek a couple of weeks ago, he did a wonderful lecture. He's just now developing it on 10 leadership styles, of which I'm going to share them with you. These were his that he gave us, and I'm starting to build on this lesson now. I'm starting to add to it. In fact, it'll someday be an Enjoy Life Club lesson. Bill can pay $10 to get his lesson back. Ten leadership styles. Number 1 is the visionary leader. We don't need to explain these. Most of these are already understood. Number 2 is the directional leader. By the way, a directional leader, an example of that would be somebody like Rehoboam. Remember when Rehoboam, after he followed his father Solomon, they asked him, are you going to tax the people and be as hard on the people as Solomon? Remember, he talked to his dad's counselors, and then he talked to his own counselors, and he said, I'm going to tax you worse. If you think my dad was bad, wait till I come to town. And, of course, we remember it divided the kingdom, and he lost it. That was a perfect example of a person who was in a leadership position that made a directional mistake and lost his organization. In other words, directional leaders are the kind of people that say, we're going this way. This is the decision we've made. They're very good. They're very helpful in an organization. They give major, you would almost call immediate momentum to an organization. But I gave you a negative example of a directional leader when I gave you the one with Rehoboam. Number 3 is strategic leaders. They're the ones who have the ability to take something, tear it apart, look at it in a strategic way, logically lay out step 1, step 2, step 3, and pull together a strategy that will get you from A to B. Number 4 is what I call managing leaders. A classic example of a managing leader was Joseph. Joseph understood the famine and said, let me tell you, here's what we've got to do. We've got to get the bins full now for 7 years. He was a managing kind of a leader. Number 5 is a motivational leader. They're the kind that can just rise you up to new heights just because they have an ability and an aura about them to motivate you. Number 6 is a shepherding leader. They're the warm, caring, overseeing type of a person. David was a classic shepherd leader. Remember when he was in the cave and he said, man, if he was thirsty, he said, oh, if I could just have a drink of water. You know what his men did? They went and risked their lives to bring him back that water. Well, why did they do that? Because he was a shepherding leader. He was so emotionally connected to his people that they would literally do anything for him. Number 7 is a team-building leader. This person has the ability to assimilate a group of individuals and make them into a team. When I gave the illustration in the last lesson of Phil Jackson, he's a team-building leader. He has the ability to take a Dennis Rodman, stars like Scotty and Michael. He's got the ability to take all these incredible personalities and somehow pull them together until they become a synergistic team. It's a real skill. It's a real gift. Number 8 is the entrepreneurial leader. This is the person who just starts things. Man, when you're at lunch, they start something. You know what I mean? I'm an entrepreneurial leader. Dick Peterson's President George said, I hate to see John on a plane have 5 minutes of his own. He says he'll get his legal pad out and start 2 more projects. The Apostle Paul was an entrepreneurial leader. That's what he was. He just loved to get things going, start things. By the way, Apostle Paul was a classic leader. Everywhere Paul went, things were stirred, things happened. He created movement. He's a classic. Probably of all the Bible examples, he is the classic leader as far as a picture of what a leader looks like. Number 9 is a re-engineering leader. They're the person who can take a bad situation, dig in, redefine it. They love to just go in there and find the problem and then knock that problem out and re-engineer it. And then finally, there's the bridge building leader. They are good at networking and bringing a variety of people together. They're like Barnabas in the Bible. Barnabas is a classic bridge building leader. Now, the reason I say that is, what I want to challenge you to do is go get you a dream team. And this is a wonderful idea. In fact, Bill and I, after he gave this lecture, we spent 30 minutes talking this over, because it was new for him and he was wanting some input, and so I was throwing some stuff back and forth, and we had one of our one-on-one, close-the-door, synergetic type of conversations for 30 minutes. Now, first of all, I want you to say, what is leadership? Leadership is what? So what you got to understand, no matter what style I just gave you, I'm saying that whoever this person is, if they're a managing leader, they have a whole bunch of people around them. In other words, please, you've got to understand, don't think that the style makes you a leader. Influence makes you a leader. There are just 10 different ways that you can influence people. Please don't misunderstand this. But we were talking, and I said, Bill, wouldn't this be a marvelous kind of a guideline for a pastor in building their staff? To build a staff around these 10 different leadership styles. and equip them all and allow them to use those styles. And think about this. Followers migrate to certain styles. Isn't that true? And think about it. Then all of a sudden you could have all kind of people operating and migrating. And so on the plane home from Chicago that day, I sat down and went through that styles of leadership again, and I looked around and I said, okay, John, how's your dream team coming? And enjoy. Are you getting a dream team around you that can do those things? And I got pretty happy. I don't have it where it needs to be yet, but boy, I think I'm 75% on my dream team. Visionary, I don't need anybody. We got a visionary leader already. I mean, in fact, when Margaret and I went to China for 3 weeks, everybody celebrated. They just said, thank God there's peace in the valley. You know. And then they'd once in a while say, wonder what he's thinking over there. You know, when I come home, they just sigh and say, here we go again. So we got a visionary leader. Directional leader, Dick Peterson is a marvelous directional leadership. He's a good decision maker. He has the ability to point and say, he's intuitive. He says, this is the way we ought to go. A strategic leader. I've got a guy named Dave Sutherland who's the president of Enjoy Stewardship Services. I can tell you he is a master at strategy. Managing leader. I've got a couple of those now. It's not Dan's greatest strengths, but it's one of his strengths. Dan Ryland is a great managing leader. He manages things well. Shepherding leader. I don't know if I have one of those yet. Linda Eggers, my assistant, is a shepherding leader. She's a wonderful shepherd. Team building leader, I've got a guy named Dennis Worden who's the head of all of our marketing department. I'm telling you, he can put a team together like nobody I have ever seen in my entire life. I mean, he has just taken us to levels. I tell you, when he has those 2-hour meetings in Enjoy, everybody wants to come. I mean, they would pay to come to his meetings because he uses his team and he puts them all together and away they go. I've got a guy named Dave Johnson who's a re-engineering leader in our company. I mean, he loves to find the problem and loves to go in there. He's surgical with it, loves to dig that thing out. Stan Toller, who you just heard a little while ago, is one of the finest bridge building leaders I have ever been around. That guy can take 17 different denominations and factions and find a way of which they're all common and bring them all together. Now all I'm saying is, look at that. Go home and build your dream team. Go home and look at these areas and say, let's do it together. Now, one more thing I want to say about the equity principle, then I'm ready to move on to characteristic number 5. It's in your notes. Considering all that you give to your relationship versus all that you're getting from it, who's getting the better deal? Choose from one of the 3 following options. I'm getting the better deal. The other person is getting the better deal. We're getting an equally good deal. Analyze your answers by looking at the 3 axioms of the equity principle. And here's what I want you to see in the equity principle. A relationship will only succeed if both individuals add value to one another. My folks, I tell you, I could camp on that for 30 minutes. It's true in a marriage, it's true in an organization, it's true in your church. When you have staff that you bring on your team, when you evaluate a potential leader and bring them on your team, I want to tell you something. If they add value to you and you say we're getting value out of them and we're giving value to them, that relationship can go on for a long, long, long time. But the moment you think you're giving more than you're receiving, that staff member becomes a heavy burden on your back. Isn't that true? It's called the equity factor. In a marriage, when a marriage is where one person is having to give in the marriage and the other person is selfish and they're taking, I tell you, it's only a matter of time. It is only a matter of time until that marriage is going to begin to crack. That's why it's important to be able to evaluate and know what a potential leader looks like, because when he or she joins your team, the more that they can bring value to the table, the more there's going to be a mutual respect and a mutual appreciation that will allow us to build a good team. How my dream team adds value to me. They love me unconditionally. My vision has become their vision. Their main goal is to help me. They represent me well before others. They transfer the loyalty of others to me. They complement my weaknesses. They expand my ministry. And we laugh and cry together. What's my response to my dream team? I will give them my best. I will trust them with my life. I will give them opportunities to make a difference. I will share my blessings with them, and I'll add value to their lives. There's all kind of good stuff that you could just camp in there. As you work on staffing, there's some stuff there that really will take you to a new level. The fifth picture of what a leader looks like. Have we got the picture so far? They make things happen. They see and seize opportunities. They have influence. They add value to me. Number 5 is that leaders attract leaders to them. You can bank on it. Like attracts like, and one of the ways to find a leader is that that leader will have other leaders around him or her. Birds of a feather flock together. If you have a, can I say something? If you have a person in a leadership position and they don't attract winner-type people, leader-type people, they're not a leader. The best way I can explain this is when I went to Skyline in 1981, Pastor Butcher was a marvelous musician, had an Irish tenor voice. In fact, every Sunday morning before he would preach, he would sing right before he preached. I mean, he'd hit that, "How Great Thou Art," he'd hit that high C, and the place would go crazy, and then he'd preach. Well, by the time he's done singing, he's got him in heaven. I mean, he could say hickory, dickory, dock, and 6 people would get saved. So here I come to town. I can't sing. And I'm with the search committee, and they're looking at me, and they're serious because they've only had one pastor for 27 years. They think every pastor has an Irish tenor voice. They think every pastor sings before he preaches. And they looked at me just as, as honest, like babes, like little lambs getting ready to go to a slaughter. And they said, "Now, will you be singing before you preach?" I said, "Don't think so." I said, "Let me put it this way. If I sing before I preach, I won't have anybody to preach to." Now, let me tell you something about the church. When I came to Skyline, it was filled with musicians. Derek Johnson, out of Skyline. Otis Skillings, out of Skyline. It was filled with musicians, and it was filled with great sound men. It was filled with anybody that does events and production. It was filled with, you know why? Because they had a pastor that was a musician. Now, when I left 14 years later, it was filled with leaders. What I'm saying is, what you are is what you attract. If you're a counseling, feely, touchy, let's have one more group session, pastor. You're going to get a bunch of touchy, feely, let's have one more group session people. Doesn't make it right, doesn't make it wrong. I'm just saying, you attract what you are. And one of the ways to identify leaders is leaders will have leaders hanging around with them. That is an absolute fact. What I'm saying is, what you are is what you attract. If you're a counseling, feely, touchy, let's have one more group session, pastor. You're going to get a bunch of touchy, feely, let's have one more group session people. Doesn't make it right, doesn't make it wrong. I'm just saying, you attract what you are. And one of the ways to identify leaders is leaders will have leaders hanging around with them. That is an absolute fact. Number 6, leaders equip people to lead. Leaders have the ability to find the people and equip them, and what leaders do well is they equip and line people up. I love what Wayne Calloway said when he said, "We take eagles and teach them to fly in formation." Boy, that's so true. Leaders have that ability. They have the ability to equip leaders. They not only can find them and attract them, but they equip them. Number 7, leaders provide ideas that help the organization. That's what leaders do. Leaders have the ability to come up with some good ideas that will really make a difference. James Allen was exactly right when he said, you are today where your thoughts have brought you, and you will be tomorrow where your thoughts take you. Now, if you're looking for a leader, I'll tell you how you'll find a leader. Leaders come up with ideas. They'll come up to you and say, Pastor, what happens if we just park the cars another way? We kind of get a traffic jam out there. What happens if we turn them around? You see, leaders will sit down and they'll think of solutions. Leaders are solution conscious. Every day of my life, I think of solutions. I mean, I look at people that are not moving as fast, the cars aren't moving so quickly. I become a traffic solution person. I think if I did the traffic lights, I would do them this way. I mean, I'm very solution conscious. I mean, there are some people that can find a solution of every problem. They're leaders. There are some people who can find a problem in every solution. When you're looking for a leader, I tell you what, they're an idea people. My pet peeve in life, staff members learn very quickly never to do this to me. My pet peeve in life was to have a staff member come and talk to me about a problem in the church without any kind of potential solutions. Let me ask you a question. This is just something to sit and think about before we run on through the rest of this lesson. If it is true that you are where your thoughts have brought you, and you will be tomorrow, like James Allen says, where your thoughts are going to carry you. Let me just ask you a question. Now, this will kind of rattle your cage, but it's good for you. It's something to ask right before you go to therapy. If you quit thinking for the next 6 months in your organization, who would carry your organization mentally? That's a great question. If you decided that you were going to put every idea, everything on, you're going to mentally cut it out for 6 months. Who within about a month would be coming in with ideas and thoughts? Who would be asking the tough questions? Who would be coming in with the tough answers? Or would everybody slide with you? And 6 months later, when you mentally entered the game again, they all picked up. I want to tell you something. In my life, this is for me personally, this may not be for you. This may not even apply to you, but it applies to me. In my life, the person that will carry the mental load with me is my most valuable player. If you, when you come to your meetings, you're the only guy that comes up with the ideas, you're the only one that comes up with the thoughts, you're the only one that comes up with the brainstorm. If you're the only one that says, what if we did this, or how about how, if you're the only guy and you have to push those buttons, then you want to really look at your staff very carefully. Because I want to tell you something. 60% of my waking day is carrying the mental load of enjoy. Where are we going? How are we going to train pastors? So this person, I think, is very important. They provide ideas that help the organization. Now, and there's some great stuff that Art Cornwell gives us on creativity and idea thinking. I'll just read it, won't need to comment it. It's in your notes. If only truly bad ideas are those the only true bad ideas, are those that die without giving rise to other ideas. If you want good ideas, you need a lot of ideas. When all of your ideas are added together, the sum should represent your breakthrough. That's a great statement. It doesn't matter if it ain't broke, it probably still can use fixing. Okay, just good stuff on ideas. Number 8. Leaders possess an uncommon great attitude. Now, we talked about this a little bit yesterday, so I won't need to dwell on it very much today, but I do believe that one of the ways to spot a leader is that they approach life entirely different than followers. Followers have a tendency to accept life Leaders have a tendency to want to change life. Followers have a tendency to say, well, this is the way it is, and leaders have a tendency to say, but why? And what would happen if we would do this differently? They have an uncommon attitude. Dennis Waitley said it better than I can, so let's just take a moment and look what he said. A single stroke is usually all it takes to separate the top money winner from the runner-up in professional golf. In football, inches can make the difference between victory or defeat. In track, speed skating, hockey, split seconds can make you a champ or a chump. In his book, The Winner's Edge, Dennis Waitley says that's what is true in athletics also holds true in other walks of life. The real leaders in business, professional, community, education, government, home, he said, also seem to draw upon a spatial cutting edge that separates them from the rest of society. So true. The cutting edge can be measured by fractions of degrees. Degrees of persistence, effectiveness, positive awareness. The winner's edge, Waitley says, paraphrasing Calvin Coolidge, is not in a gifted birth or a high IQ or in talent. The winner's edge is all in the attitude, not the aptitude. Attitude is the criterion for success, but you can't buy an attitude for $1 million. Attitudes are not for sale. Oh, that's good stuff. I am so glad I'm hearing this lesson. Man, I'm going to go home and build a dream team. You going to go home and build a dream team? I mean, come on. I'm going to get back to the lesson. Let me ask you a question. All right, what are you going to do with this stuff? You're not going to take this stuff home and put it on the shelf, are you? That's what you did at the last conference stuff. I'm working too hard for you to put this stuff on the shelf. This is me. This is my life. This is where I live. This is what I believe in. This is what I die for this. This didn't come from the top of my head. This comes from the soul of my being. Don't take this stuff and throw it away. See, when it's all done, somebody says, how will you ever know if enjoy is a success? Can I give you that answer? It's very simple. If when I get to the top of the mountain with enjoy, I got a whole bunch of you with me, it was a success. Isn't that simple? If I get there and you're not there, so I'm going to be in your life. I started to say I was going to be in your face. I'll be a little bit of that too, but in your life sounds a little more spiritual and godly. I'm telling you, in the next 20 years, I have enough faith to believe that I and enjoy can make a difference. It won't be in buildings, because I'll never have those. I gave that up a year and a half ago. It won't be in titles, because if I wanted titles, I'd have stayed where I was and let everybody know what I did. It's going to be you. It's going to be you taking this stuff and going home and not sticking it on the shelf, but laying it out and looking at it and working through it and sweating and praying and digging. Putting up some names of influencers and coming back to this stuff and say, okay, what can I do to take them to the next level? It's going to be all of this. It's going to be all. Then you're going to write a letter and you're going to say, hey, John, that lecture on how to spot a leader. Let me tell you something. I went home and I found 3 leaders in the next month. And you know something and I know something, and both this is why we're both here. You came to learn and I came to give. And I want to tell you something. When you spot those 3 leaders in a month and you write me that letter, I'll look at that letter and I'll say, ha, they wouldn't have done it if they wouldn't have heard the lecture. And you're sad I wouldn't have done it if I wouldn't have come. And you win and I win, and that leader you spotted is going to really win. Do you see how life is? You can either take a trip with people that will elevate you, or you can take a trip with people that will drag you down and bite at your heels. And the choice is yours. And as for me and my house, We're teaching leadership. We're teaching leadership. Excuse me, I got carried away, didn't I? That's who I am. If you believed in yourself as much as I believed in you, and if you understood what this stuff would do for you if you really lived it, you would go to levels that you cannot imagine in your life. I have found that leaders are emotionally strong. They're resilient against the storms of life. It doesn't mean they don't get hurt, but they do well. And Bob Beal has marvelous work in this area in a book called Increasing Your Leadership Competence. It's one of the books we have in our leadership library that you ought to be taken advantage of. And he talks about, let me just talk to you real quickly, just give them to you. He talks about the fact that coping skills are so important with a leader, and they deal effectively with 5 things. Number 1 is change, the whole process of change. Number 2 is discouragement. Number 3 is fatigue. Number 4 is failure. And number 5 is pressure. And he says leaders do a good job with those areas in their life. We all have all of this: pressure, fatigue, failure, discouragement, all of us. I'm telling you, we get it. I mean, we get hit by it. So it isn't the fact that we are numb to it or we avoid it. It's just the fact that we understand, through emotional strength and through God and everything else, how to overcome it. Number 9, the 9th picture of a leader is that leaders live up to their commitments. In fact, commitment is another name for success. I'm listening to some stuff by James Rohn now. I've got about 15 or 20 of his tapes. This is one of his quotes. It is important to know that there are 2 pains all of us must consider. You cannot escape them both, and you always trade one for the other. The first pain is the pain of discipline, and the other is the pain of regret. The pain of discipline comes first, and the pain of regret comes after. And here's the best reason for trading the pain of regret for the pain of discipline. Discipline weighs ounces, and regret weighs tons. I was in a doctor's office, many years ago, 12, 13 years ago, and I was reading a medical magazine while I was waiting, and I pulled out this next thing. In fact, I pulled it out and laminated it, which makes it godly and spiritual. This is out of a medical magazine. We hear it almost every day: sigh, sigh, sigh. I can't get myself motivated to lose weight, test my blood sugar, etc. And we hear an equal number of sighs and diabetes educators who can't get their patients motivated to do the right things for their diabetes and for their health. We have news for you. Motivation is not going to strike you like lightning. And motivation is not something that someone else, nurse, doctor, family member, can bestow or force on you. The whole idea of motivation is a trap. Forget motivation. Just do it. Exercise, lose weight, test your blood sugar, or whatever. Do it without motivation, and then guess what? After you start doing the thing, that's when the motivation comes and makes it easy for you to keep on doing it. Motivation is like love and happiness. It's a byproduct. When you're actively engaged in doing something, it sneaks up and zaps you when you least expect it. As Harvard psychologist Jerome Bruner says, you're more likely to act yourself into feeling than to feel yourself into action. So act. Whatever it is that you know you should do, do it. Leaders do not live by their emotions. They live by character and live by commitment. Number 10. One more picture of a leader, and then I think you've got it. Leaders are loyal to those over them. Even though it's the bottom of my 10 looks at what a leader looks like, I want to tell you this. If you do not do this one well, you disqualify yourself. It may be at the bottom, but it is a major disqualifier. My good friend, Tom Phillippe, told me many, many years ago when I was in my young 30s. He looked at me and saw that probably God was going to grant me a pretty good measure of success. And he said something to me one day in Canada when we were together doing a conference. I didn't understand it then, didn't even appreciate it then, didn't agree with it then, but I understand it, appreciate it, and agree with it now. He said, John, the more successful you are in life, the more difficult it will be to bring people around you that you can truly trust. And I looked at Tom and I said, Tom, you're suspicious. No, he said, believe me. Because the more successful you are, you'll bring people around you, you'll never know what their angle is. And I have learned in my life that the people that I can truly trust are truly my best friends.